Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapters 7 and 21, we read, "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not. If you shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Paramahansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused, and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramahansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. There was a waterfall not far away, he told Swami Kriyananda, where I took them sometimes. It was dangerous to cross there, but I would cry out to the boys, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes," they would shout back enthusiastically, and so we always crossed in safety. Years later, after I'd gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus the Master explained, "Believe not, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one pointed awareness, which leads to self-realization." The Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, underscores the necessity for such one-pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bring it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're enjoying our altar with the fresh look of the flowers. It's real special today. Have it look that way. It's different, but I think we all love it, so it'll probably happen again. So I thank Shanti for that. So I just have the opportunity to share with you a topic that's probably near and dear to many of our hearts. And this topic, it's interesting, we've been talking about prayer for the last couple of days, and this topic talks more about the power of prayer. And Jesus said these statements, which are pretty amazing. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. All things that we ask for in prayer, believing, we shall receive it. And I know these are very powerful words, and yet I tune into my experiences too, and ask you to tune into your experiences. And I think some of us that, we're not exactly getting it somehow. We've asked, but we don't always receive. So there must be something going on there, a little deeper than what kind of seems like is on the surface. And sure enough, these teachings tell us very much what we need to do and what's going on. So rather than keep you in suspense here, I'll tell you what it is. So we know that where that power is, in the little story about Yogananda, it doesn't come from us ego human person just because we want to do something or have something. That's a start. But it takes more than that. It takes that attunement with our higher self. It takes that awareness that we truly are a child of God, that we truly have that divine quality, whatever it is that we want, we can have it, assuming that we are tuned to the divine will. Because that is what we're here for, to learn, to manifest our true reality, which is we are children of God. We are that divine spark that we need to bring out. And belief, which is what all of us have, I'm sure we're here, which is a step above those that don't have any belief in what you can't taste, touch, feel, and all that stuff, which is what we're talking about in particular. Belief is a step, and it's an important step. So we need to believe. But believing it's a progression, because we're actually moving from belief towards faith. Faith being a much deeper commitment, a much deeper understanding of what it is that we're doing. And so we have to start with belief. Belief is kind of an assumed truth. And faith is actually a certainty of that truth, because faith comes with experience. And isn't it true, when you've experienced something, you know? And I don't know about you, but I've had times when I've experienced something and someone else who hasn't tries to tell me differently. And there's just no way I can change my mind, because I know through my experience what it is. And so that's what we're moving towards, is we have the faith now. We have the belief now, but as we know, beliefs aren't always, we find out later that they aren't necessarily always true. And I reflect on this, but back before, in 1492, before Columbus sailed the ocean blue, people knew that they believed that the earth was flat, right? And they thought, those ships are going to sail right out of sight, and then eventually they're going to come to the end, and boom, they're going to drop right off. I guess they thought that. What else? How else could they think about a flat earth? So that was the belief system in that day. And we can just look back in history and see how all these beliefs that the earth was the center of the universe, and these things that scientists have proven over the years now that, it's not true. I remember when I was going to school in science, we believed that science told us that, the smallest little molecule were these little atoms and little neutrons and electrons, and, that was the very smallest particle. Well, I found out many years later that, no such thing. Those particles don't exist. The particles can be broken, and particles become energy. And the only building block that there is for this universe is energy. I found it pretty easy to imagine putting electrons and protons and atoms together, but energy, that is what this whole universe is made out of. The belief systems we start to, as we expand our awareness, they start to open up and reveal the deeper truths behind it. And so for now, we go from belief to faith, because as you begin to open up, you begin to understand these higher truths in a way that before you couldn't even have imagined, but you experience what it's all about. I know I had quite a few experiences of going from belief to faith as I have been starting my journey, in particular this lifetime on the path. And the one I want to relate to you has to do with abundance, because it's something that to this day I am sometimes still amazed what happens. And back in those days when I first started on the path, having read the autobiography of a yogi, we didn't have a lot in terms of our Ananda family here. It was quite sparse. We were just starting off, but I had a deep desire to be a part of working with devotees and sharing the teachings in a way that I could, and yet I needed to make an income. But with promptings, inner guidance and things that came, I did end up quitting my job with the idea that I'd be participating with the startup of East West Bookshop. And that was all wonderful, and I remember the joy that I felt and the energy that I felt. I couldn't sleep sometimes at night, practically, 4 hours a night, and I was just raring to go. There was such energy that I could feel in this movement. And yet I still needed to have an income. And so the only thing I could think of was I had some land that I had bought about 6 years earlier when I'd started my teaching job. And this land was in Cle Elum, Washington. It was some acreage that I had fallen in love with great big ponderosa pines. Actually, when I went to Monona Village, it reminded me very much of the kind of land that's there at Monona Village. It's drier and very beautiful, and I had bought a lot of acreage there with the idea that, I'd pay it off and eventually it could be something for retirement, maybe. Well, at the same time, I wanted to do this here in this area, to follow my path. And so I went over to list the property for sale. And when I went there, the owner of the real estate lady that I talked to said, she said, property here is just not moving at all. This was in the mid-1980s. She said, property is just not moving. She said, don't expect you're going to sell this very fast unless you drop the price. Now, drop the price, and she said, you might be able to move it in a year or two. Well, I didn't want to drop the price. That didn't seem right. So I kept the price the same, and I listed it the same. And she said, I'll do my best, but 2 to 5 years is probably the best I can do. And you'll probably have to take a contract, so they'll have to pay on time for you. And I said, just do what you can. I remember I drove home, and I was, for losing something that was important to me, I was feeling such happiness. I mean, it was just great. I was singing, and I thought, it just felt so right. And so I got home, and this was back before cell phones. I no sooner walked in the door, put things away, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and the phone rang. And it was that real estate lady. And she had found the buyer, she said, had practically followed her into her office. She'd gone out to the land, put up the sign, driven back to her office, and she said she'd no sooner got there, this man walked in, and he said he wanted to buy that land. And not only did he want to buy it, he had cash. He was going to pay outright for that land. So within 3 weeks, that land had sold. And it was such an affirmation for doing God's will, even though it might not have felt like it was the right thing to do, because it shouldn't be. You leave your job and sell something that you really want. But when you follow God's will, when you follow that inner sense, these things happen. I prayed for money. I prayed that I could have it so that I could be a part of the bookstore creation that we engaged in. I didn't know how it was going to come about, and I didn't think that land, I had doubts that the land would sell. I wasn't praying with that kind of power that, Jesus said we had to have believing. But because I gave it to God, I remember thinking, this is yours, Divine Mother. We're doing this for you all along. That was the underlying prayer. And things unfolded. It was just one of these incredible lessons for all of us in those beginning years to watch the unfoldment of what we have now. And, this is still just the beginning. I mean, this is only a few number of years in terms of lifetimes, and, it's just unfolding as we speak right now. And the miracles continue to happen. This building, of course, is another one of those miracles. And it's because if we tune in with belief and we try our very darndest to follow whatever it is that we're feeling, then it turns into a faith. I mean, now my faith is so much stronger in following that, because I've had some experiences that allow me to keep moving that way. And you too. We all need to do it in little steps to start with. Nobody's asking you to take the big leap off the cliff. But, a little step for you is going to help to lead you in the right direction towards that greater and greater faith, belief, and understanding. And I don't know about you, but sometimes, frequently, my prayers aren't exactly focused. In our teachings here, we're very fortunate that we aren't told to believe something just because the minister tells you to believe it, or because, the Bible says so, which is great if you can do that, but we get the teachings that Yogananda said, don't believe everything I said. He said, do it and prove it to yourself. You can imagine a teacher coming up and telling you that, a minister? But he did, because the teachings that we bring through this ray of self-realization is that you can practice using these techniques that we teach and get there yourself. It's a process of doing your best every day to follow the meditations that are requested, that you practice, to do it to the best of your ability. To energize, to pray, to try to give everything to God. All these things, there's so many. But just do your best every day, and those steps start to lead you deeper and deeper inside, towards that stillness, towards that divine presence. And you know it's right because you begin to feel that rightness in yourself. And I know when it comes to prayer, sometimes it's not easy, and I just want to demonstrate because this is probably going to be something you recognize. But we had a retreat not too long ago, and it was wonderful. A retreat to silence. We do it once a year out at Whidbey Island on a wonderful location. But I'm responsible for kind of putting all the little details together, and details don't always stick as well as I used to. But anyway, I was thinking about trying to pray and God, just guide us that this will be a wonderful retreat, and all the people that come will, be enveloped in your love and your joy. And then I began thinking, but the bananas. We couldn't get the bananas. Dad and I couldn't get the bananas at Costco because they weren't right. They were green, and where am I going to get those bananas? Where can you find ripe bananas? Isn't that what happens to our prayers sometimes? We're trying so hard, and then boom, we get pulled here, we get pulled there. But it's okay. The idea is you want to keep doing it anyway. As soon as I remembered that what I was doing was not planning for bananas at that point, I was praying that the retreat would be filled with God's light. So I brought it back again and did my best to keep, in that mode. So don't beat yourself up, but do keep doing it. And do take those steps. Those steps get larger as you get on the path, but that's okay, you're stronger. As Yogananda said, on the spiritual path, it takes a warrior. You can't be someone who allows yourself to just be batted around. You have to, when you find that energy in your spine, that you know what's right, you know what you need to do, you have to really put out a lot of energy. But do it. Do whatever it takes for yourself. I need to tell this story too. It was because it has to do with the Bible reading that we just had today. And it said, Jesus said, of course, if you have faith and you doubt not, he said, we can tell a mountain to be cast into the sea. And Yogananda said that there was a man that came to him and told him this story, saying that, he said, I believed in Jesus, and I believe what Jesus said, and so I own a home, and it happens to have this hill right in front of it, right out the front window, and on the other side of the hill is the ocean. And he says, I love to have the ocean view. He said, so if Jesus can say the mountains can be cast into the sea, so I can do it too, because I believe in Jesus. And so he prayed, that night that that mountain be cast into the sea. Well, he went to bed and got up in the morning and ran over to his picture window and looked out and, darn, if that mountain wasn't there, still there. And he shook his fist and he said, I knew you'd still be there. Well, that's not exactly praying with that attunement with the divine will, is it? That's where we're headed. And the other experience is more what we usually get. Because, what we want isn't necessarily what we need either. because, I can see moving a mountain, fine, but we don't need that. What we need is whatever it takes for us to grow stronger spiritually, to grow closer to that reality of who we are. So it isn't necessarily what we want, it's what we need. And so we need to always be in tune the best that we can with what is for our highest good. And that isn't always what we want. Isn't that too bad? But it's true. It's what God wants. And so everything, if we can continue to give more of that energy, or more of that attunement, feeling to God, just try to always tune in as you take your next step, so you know what's offering. Because we need to become an instrument of that power. We're not separate. And we need to be that instrument. Whatever seems right. I know there was another story I wanted to tell here. This is something that happened more recently. It was an awareness that I could see what was going to happen. I could see it coming. Have you ever had that experience where you know something's coming towards you and you kind of ignore it? It's kind of like, well, it's not really going to hit, here. Maybe it'll hit somewhere else. Yeah. And anyway, I could see it coming, and anyway, I had the opportunity because of that to kind of begin to churn around inside, to realize I needed to make the right decision, not the decision that I wanted to make necessarily. So it actually turned out to be a fairly easy choice for me this time, but I'd had practice in the past too. So that helps. If you start practicing with the littler things as they get bigger, it gets to be easier. So the choice was saying the right thing and saying yes, it's what I need to do, and this is what I will do. And it actually became quite easy for a change. And really the more we practice it, the more it doesn't matter what we want. We just want to serve that and be an instrument of God and just please God. And if you can just kind of always bring it back to that. Is this what you want for me, Lord? Is this the best thing in my highest interest so that I can learn and grow closer to thee? What is it? Those things start to happen. If you can consciously ask for it, you begin to understand and feel what is the right thing to do. For success and failure isn't necessarily what we think it is on this earthly plane. Someone whose business failed, well, maybe on the material plane it's a failure, but maybe on the spiritual plane for that person it's a great success. And that is what counts. For when we leave these material bodies, all we take with us is our consciousness. That's it. And wherever our consciousness is when we leave these bodies, that is what we're going to take with us and bring back into the next lifetime. That's why you moms and dads of these new babies, and if you've had several children, it's not a clean slate. I remember being told that's a clean slate, and the parents get to, write whatever you want on that slate and make that child whatever. And that's baloney. They come in and it real soon. Especially if you have two, one and then another, and you see how different they are. You haven't done anything different. No, they come in with their own consciousness that they brought in from all the lifetimes that they have built up. Interesting, isn't it? And all you can do is your best to help them to move forward in their journey, because that's what it is for them too. I know Sister Gyanamata is one of my idols, I guess you could say. She's Yogananda's foremost disciple. And her book, God Alone, is, it's a Bible in itself in many respects. Anyway, one of the sayings that she brings is something that I try to keep present. And this is the first time that I could say this without cringing. And it was when Sister Gyanamata was facing that circumstance in her life, she felt coming towards her that she just assumed not face, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't even know what prayer to ask. And Divine Mother gave her the prayer to ask. And that prayer was, change no circumstance of my life, change me. And it's taken me all these years, 30 plus years, to finally reach that point where I could say that in a way that I meant it. That I truly am ready to have those changes come to me, no matter how difficult they are, because I want to find God in this lifetime. And you know, so many times we say, well, how can we possibly do it in this lifetime? We don't know. But all you can do is just give it your all. And it's perfect, whatever happens. So we're going to end with our wonderful song. This will be during our offertory prayer. But I want to just repeat the last stanza of this poem, prayer poem of Yogananda's, which follows in what I'm talking about. It says, in waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any, God, God, God. So let's take a moment of silence.
Reading from Whispers from Eternity. The streamlets of our prayers rush out and conjoin with the well springs of our hearts, uniting in a single mighty flow. Our broad, deep-flowing rivers of prayer move swiftly toward thy oceanic presence, breaking all narrow embankments of indifference, dissolving every eddy and large whirlpool of worldly desire, flowing freely over the protruding rocks of bad habits, and straightening the once winding ways of delusion. Our great river of devotion crosses sands of human oblivion, uncounted lives lost in eternity to present memory, and inundates every trace of past trials and painful past experience. Yet even now, those shores seem far away. Doggedly, our flood moves on toward thy sea of shining vastness. Pour thou unceasingly the raindrops of thy mercy, swelling the flood of our prayers, that they reach at last triumphantly thine ever-waiting shores.